I greet you all, and I hope that you're having a wonderful time. Thank you, Sister Florence, and I want to thank everybody who spoke today. It started very powerful, and it is very inspirational. It is I would say, exciting to get together, though it is a virtual, but the excitement is still there. It is that sense of being together. I think that is very important, of the sense of being together. And I really want to thank Dorothy for that powerful message of building us up. And I want to piggyback from that message of building up. And there is one aspect that I am tasked for very few minutes to talk about, and that will be the aspect of building us up in the financial wealth. We know that wealth is very broad in terms of definition, and that's how we're supposed to approach it. Many people have confused wealth and riches, and I've talked that a lot. I've dedicated a whole chapter in the book that I've just written to differentiate between wealth and riches. And when we define wealth, we want to approach it in a more holistic way. We want to approach life in all its length and its breadth and its height. And one aspect will be financial wealth. And there are many other aspects, like we have social wealth. We also have physical wealth. It will benefit us nothing that we have $1 million in our bank account, but we're sleeping on a hospital bed and we cannot do anything. There are people who are very rich, but they are very poor in terms of their relationships. So we talk about social wealth. And there are other aspects of intellectual and mental wealth. And we also piggybacked on the financial wealth and other types of wealth, which I will encourage you to pick up the copy of the book, Average to Abundance. And the book, Average to Abundance, talks a lot about the wealth, the economics of wealth, of what are we supposed to do, what are we going to do in order to become wealth, especially economically or financially. Together with that, I went ahead and I've just finished authoring a workbook which go together with the textbook. So we have a workbook which is going to help us in a practical steps on the ways that we could approach the text, and we could learn on what we are doing, and we could systematically build on the aspect of building wealth in our lives. In terms of the product that is out there, the Average to Abundant book has 4 different formats. We have the audio, we have the textbook, we also have the Kindle book, and we have the workbook which is out there. These are the technologies, or these are the products that together we can do them as a bundle in order to get everything that is included in this idea or the ideology of systematically building our financial wealth. Now, What is the problem? That's the question many people might ask. Or what really prompted me to write this book and come up with this initiative? Most of us are, I would say boldly, are in the survival mode when it comes to financial well-being, or when it comes to the wealth aspect, the financial aspect of our wealth. And we're trying to thrive, but we don't know how are we going to get connected from being a survivor to being a person who is thriving. And that is a major reason why I came up with the book. So to answer the question, or to solve the problem of how do we thrive financially rather than just surviving, we will see that we need to know how do we go into that ladder. As you can see on our slide, we are having a ladder, and this guy is surviving, is trying to make it to the end of the month. Every time he looks in his pockets are empty, and the guy is trying to survive. Now, how do we take this person from a survival mode all the way to a thriving mode? There is a pathway, and this pathway, everybody has his own pathway, though the principles are the same, but the nitty-gritty of going through this ladder might be different. And that is why I say we need to own the pathway. These books or these products will help us, everybody, to develop his own pathway, which is very unique to his life or to her life, in order to become successful in terms of building a wealth that is sustainable. And if we move forward, what are the results? What are the things that I want to promise, or we will rest assured that when we go through this process, we are going to achieve? I want to say boldly that there are certain principles which are not regarding to anybody. They do not respect anybody. If we follow these principles, they will work for us. These are rules, or these are laws which are out there. If we follow these laws or these principles, we customize them in our situation, wherever we are, regardless of our gender, regardless of our educational status, regardless of where we are and who we are, or in which country we're in. If we follow these principles, and I've tried so hard to make sure that these principles are universal. If we follow these principles, I want to assure you that they're going to work in your life. It is possible, not only from a human perspective, but also from a spiritual perspective. It is God's will to see that we prosper in the things that we do. And one of the areas that we are promised to prosper is in our financial well-being. That's not the only place. As I've said, wealth is so broad. So we need to also look at other dimensions. But for the sake of today's talk, I will limit myself to only talk about financial wealth and talk about the journey. Let's see, how are we going to move? How are we going to travel on this path from surviving to thriving? I will summarize what you're going to get in both the workbook together with the textbook on the journey. How do we journey? That when you get your copies, you know exactly what you're doing. The first step, or you might call it the first chapter, will be to be careful to look exactly on your GPS and map out where is your destination. You cannot start a journey if you don't know where you're going. So the first thing to know is we need to define what is wealth and make sure that we don't confuse wealth with other things. That, I believe, is a fundamental and a very, very basic thing to start with. And that is a step number one. Step number two will be we need to establish the principles. What are the principles that we need to follow? And remember, principles come from a French word, which is principe. We get the word princes, which are rulers, which means that these are the rules of the game. We need to be very careful to establish the rule of the game. If you get into the financial or creation of wealth and you don't really know the rules, it is very, very easy to miss the mark. It is easy to, find yourself not doing what you're supposed to do, because the rules are very clear and they're stated. I've taken 4 rules and I've worked on details on how do we engage ourselves in a process of wealth creation. And I will encourage you to get both the book and the workbook and look at the rules. There are about 10 rules, but I concentrated only on 4 rules. Very important, the principles of wealth creation. And after that, we talk about in our journey, it is very easy to get deterred. It's very easy to miss the mark. It's very easy to lose the focus. There are things that will either block our way, we'll get discouraged, we get disdained, we get dispirited, we quit. There are so many things which will act as roadblocks on our way. Dr. Dorothy talked a little bit about consistency and about tenacity. We need to be determined. Nobody promises that it's going to be easy. But one thing which I want to promise you is that it is doable. If other people have done it, you can also do it. Remember, this process does not regard any person. The process doesn't favor anybody. If you put your heart into it, if you put all your energy into it, I want to promise you that you will get to the top. You will get to the summit. Now, there are so many things which are out there which will want to distract you, which will want to block you, will want to, make you quit, make you go back. And we need to be aware in this particular journey, what are the things that are out there, and they're out there to block you from moving, to resist your way of getting to the top. We talked about that in details. Now, in the journey, we need to establish the reason for seeking or generating wealth. Many people call it a big why. Everybody has their reason why they need or why they think being wealth is important in their lives. And everybody has everybody has his own or her own motivation. There are those who say, you know what, I was brought up in a very poor family, and I do not want my children to experience what I experience. That can be your big why. Some people say, you know what, there is a lot of suffering in the world. I wish there will be somebody who will feel what a poor person is feeling. So I want to be wealthy in order to help somebody else. That can be your big why. So everybody if you look deep in your heart, there is that trigger point, and you need to pause on that trigger point and establish it and put it very clear in front of you. This is my reason why I need to generate wealth. And it has to be a good reason. There are some people who want to generate wealth for a bad reason. And I believe that we're mature enough to know what are the differences between a good reason and a bad reason. You know, it's all about the intention and the motivation. So I took time to explain, you know, why you should have your reason in order to build up. And the workbook will help you through that process of establishing your big why. What is my reason? And I've asked a lot of questions in this workbook for you to arrive to your big why of generating wealth in your life. And that is very important once you have already locked into it, because it's going to guide you that once you have reached to the peak, you will not use or misuse, you will not abuse or misuse the wealth that God has given into your life. Many people, because of not having their big why, once they get to the top, they forget why they are on the top because they did not clearly determine. I think you know in your life, people who once they got what they were looking for, they automatically changed and they became a completely different person. Either they became mean, or they became rude, or they became unapproachable, or they just changed their personality because probably of some financial wealth which has appeared or happened in their lives. A big why is very important. Now, what are the skills that we need to develop or we need to have in order to go into this journey? I've gone ahead and explained some of the skills that are important, especially financial skills, not only to generate wealth, but also to make sure that those processes which you're developing are sustainable. We all know, research shows that people who win lottery, millions of dollars, it is known that between 3 and 5 years, they're already bankrupt, and they become worse than they were before. What's the reason? They did not develop the disciplines. They did not develop the skills of sustaining and being where they are. We don't want that to happen to us. So these skills are very important in your journey going to the top. Without these skills, we will be putting money into pockets that have holes. You know, we all know of people who are blessed with wealth or with good jobs. They are earning 6 figures, but they are broke all the time. They are asking for $1 every day. But you look at their salary, look at their income. They are having big income, but they don't have a discipline. They don't have skills. We know our sister, Lulu Masawe. She teaches a lot about the skills in order to sustain the wealth that we have. Now, this is the place where I bought a lot of principles from her knowledge and from her wisdom. In fact, in the book, I quoted lots of the things that she has been training us, and I will want to encourage you to get in touch with her, to get some wisdom on how are you going to develop these skills, budgeting, how are you going to develop the skills of, how are you going to plan for your retirement, how are you going to plan for your finances and things like that, including insurance and all the things that are important to have them in our belt in order to sustain the wealth that we are going to generate. Now, most of us, if not all of us, very few of us come from families that were already millionaires or were already well-to-do with finances. Very few of us can say that. But most of us, like me, we came from either average families or families that are below, poverty line. So once God starts building and, blessing you with wealth, we get into a new land. We get into a new nation or a new country. We become immigrants. And I've talked about the new immigrant syndrome. We are new to this kind of life of having abundance in terms of finances. We need to know, as newcomers in wealth, how do we behave ourselves? How do we go about making sure that the wealth that we have generated doesn't end with us, but it becomes generational wealth? And it is also known that children of millionaires are not necessarily going to become millionaires. Why? Because sometimes there is a generational gap there, okay? And it takes effort to train the next generation on the skills that we have developed in our journey. And if we have arrived, we have to learn from those who have been there, ahead of us. So we are all newcomers in this new world or in this new land of being wealth. It is a land by itself, and there are some rules of the game here. We need to know how to play those rules, and we have gone ahead and talked a little bit about those. There are a lot of temptations to take shortcuts. Based on our background, some of us come from a background where if you don't know how to take a shortcut, you will never reach to the top. That's the background that I personally had. I came from a place whereby you need to know somebody, you need to do something to get to the top. If you don't know anybody, if you don't do anything, you're going to remain where you are. And that can have residual impact in the way we think, in our mindset. And it is very dangerous once you get to a new world whereby it is now dependent upon you. Because this is so deep in us, it becomes part and parcel of us. It becomes our second nature to take shortcuts. And the saying here is, shortcuts here are always wrong cuts. In the whole process of wealth generation and sustainability of wealth, if we take shortcuts, it will always come back and bite us. So I want to put a caution there. Do not take shortcuts. Eliminate everything that you know is a shortcut and put it as your core value, that I will not do anything which is against the law. I will not do anything which is unethical. These are the things that are going to help you sustain that wealth in a very long time and pass it even to the coming generation, not only to your children, but to your children's children. And we have talked in that chapter a lot of things that can be shortcut, and they can short circuit your whole process of getting to the top in the journey. And once you are at the peak, I want to remind you one thing: remember where you came from. So these two products, the workbook and the textbook or the paperback, I will encourage you to have them. I've just summarized what are in the book. I don't want to talk everything which is in the book and preempt you reading the book. I want you to have these copies. I will love to send them to you as a bundle. and read them together. When you finish chapter 1 in the paperback, put also chapter 1 in the, start working on chapter 1 on the workbook. So do them together, let them go in tandem. Chapter 2 in the paperback, we'll start working chapter 2 also on your workbook, and you will see the way you build yourself. I've asked very critical questions that very few people will ask you, and I encourage you to get the copy of the workbook. You will never be the same. And write as it is your copy, write as much as you can, answer those questions, and I believe that you will never be the same. Once you see it, you have to desire it, or you want to want it. And once you just desire it, don't be amongst the people who just desire it. I want you to take a bold step and start doing it. I want to encourage you. I want to encourage you that it is possible. If other people made it, it's possible for you also to make it. Remember, this process is doable. It's not rocket science. It needs determination. It needs focused mind, but it is possible. It's not simple, but it is possible. God bless you, and I want to wish you all the best.